Welcome to this series where we want to get into tables in Tableau and their alternatives, whether it is highlight table or heat maps. How do we actually get a table in Tableau and how is it different from other tools? One of the things that I found very difficult when I came to Tableau was tables. Tables did not make sense to me the way I have to build them in Tableau. So it took me quite a while to understand the logic of how to build tables. So in this series, I wanted to communicate this to people who are new to Tableau so that they can actually understand the logic behind building these tables. And then once we are done with that, then let's look at the alternatives to tables that are highlight tables or heat maps. And one of the other things that is very confusing about table is this thing called measure names and values, which are also used in a number of different places in Tableau, like when you are building dual axis charts, like putting a bar and line together. But that's also a table related concept, so which we will cover here. So in part one, let's first take a simple table in Excel, and then let's see how we can replicate this in Tableau. By that, we will understand deeply how tables are built in Tableau. Then in part two, let's get into this whole concept of measure names and measure values, why they are important. And then in part three onwards, we'll look at table alternatives. So let's get started. So here is the report that we have used in previous videos. A reasonably complex report because it has dimensions on both columns, the gender breakdown as well as rows. So we have a year and quarter, and then there are numbers here. So let's try to produce such a report in Tableau and then understand the different elements of this. So rather than getting started directly by producing this, I will take a simpler version of this, which is just a year and the total salary number itself. And then we will see how this works in Tableau. So here I am in Tableau. So rather than using a 220 row data set, which is what was used in the screenshot, let me start with something which just contains 10 rows so that numbers are easier for you to see and you can just mentally do a lot of these calculations, just 10 records. So the easiest way and the fastest way to create a table in Tableau is through this mechanism called double click. So let's start off by double clicking on a dimension. So here we are interested in date. So I double clicked and then I double clicked on salary. Now this has produced a table. The table's direction is not correct. So I'm going to swap rows and I got this, right? So if you look at this, the green pill, the salary pill is not on rows or columns. As we know, any green pill on rows or columns will produce either a line or bar chart. So in this case, if I drag and drop it here, it's going to produce what chart? Yes, line chart, because we have a date related field here. So that's going to produce a line chart. Here line chart in this orientation doesn't make sense. So that's why Tableau originally produced year and numbers like this, so that when you drag and drop, it actually corresponds to this. But anyway, for our purposes, let's bring it back to this area. Let's understand how why Tableau needs to put things here in text. What is it really doing? To me, the best way to understand something like this, where we take something so familiar to us like tables and then try to see how this is done in Tableau, is to compare this to Excel, a tool that a lot of us are very familiar with. So what I'm gonna do is to put things side by side like this. I'm gonna have the same data set in Excel, same data set in Tableau, and then compare, like apple to apple, orange to orange, how things work, so that in your mind you can see how Excel is doing, which I think is more logical and more intuitive for a lot of people, and then to compare that to Tableau. So that way you can see what choices are there, and then what has Tableau done, is it better or worse than what Excel has done. So that way you will have many more anchors rather than just trying to understand how Tableau is working. So let me set up the screen now. Yeah, so here is both Tableau on this side by side. I'm gonna clear this so that we have a empty thing. So here also I took the same 10 field data set on the Excel. As you can see, Excel by default lists all the fields in an alphabetical order, no breakdown of anything, whereas Tableau breaks down numbers and text into two different compartments that are called dimensions and measures, which is convenient, which is a better thing than what Excel has done. So now if you look here, so here pivot table is giving this to build a report, choose fields from the pivot table field list. And then this graphical icon nicely illustrates as you are ticking, checking things off, and then these things are coming into this column, your report is going to be populated, right? So here the same area is here. So we have columns and rows shelf here. So you have columns and rows here. Just compare the icon here on rows versus what is on Tableau, and the same here also, columns, and you can see the icons are very similar, right? They are the same. So we see a filters here, and then we see a filters in Tableau too. Yeah, so those three are very similar. And then we see this values with this kind of an icon, so values which is indicating some sort of a summation, right? Whereas in Tableau we don't see such an icon or even a place there, right? So this is the first difference really. So let's see how Tableau and Excel does it. So in Excel, all I need to do is I just tick. Yeah, so I want to start off with date. So I am not just click on a date. So what Excel is doing, it has taken year, quarter and join date and put them all on rows. So for those of you who have used Excel for a long time, this is a feature of Excel 2016. And in my opinion, this is inspired by Tableau, because Tableau was the first tool I have seen at least now 4 years back, which actually aggregated data in a sensible way and then put them. Previously, Excel will just populate everything, just straight away. So we do not want quarters or dates. So let's keep this alone. So as you can see, this is giving us years and then the grand total cell. Let's come to Tableau, and then the equivalent for the checking of things in pivot table to Tableau is double click. So I'm just gonna double click here. So as you can see here it is putting join date on columns, whereas here it put join date on rows. Is this better or is this better? So normally if you are building a report from that perspective, putting this in rows makes more sense. But generally the time related items we are used to seeing on the columns. So if I have a report, for example, the typical report that we see, which is a financial report, income statement, or what's called profit and loss, it has a number of numbers on the rows, starting from top line, revenue, then minus expenses, minus blah blah blah. And then on the right hand side we see this year, last year, this quarter, last quarter. From that sense, what Tableau is doing actually is more intuitive and more appreciable than what Excel is doing. From that perspective, this is okay. But for comparison, let's bring this manually to rows. Yeah. So this is very similar. Yeah. So now let's come here. I want to put salary. All I need to do is check, and then it has put this into the values area, and then which is displayed here. So the values area is showing this summation icon, and then sum salary I put, and then it is doing sum of salary, which is the same description here also. So totally makes sense, right? So everything is very clear here. So now let's come here. The equivalent of tick there is double click. As I've told you, I'm going to double click. So the nice thing is the numbers have come in here. The header is missing. We don't see sum of salary here. But whereas this sum of salary has come in, sit in this marks card area. So if you just compare these two, this values is equivalent to, some, in some sense, some area of this marks card. As we have seen in earlier videos, each of these properties, color, size, text, all of them play some role, right? So let's ignore all of them. Let's focus on this item called text. Literally the T here and the T here tell you that basically this pill is actually sitting here. That is what it is doing. Yeah. So the equivalent for this values area in Tableau is this text thing. So let me, how do I really confirm this? What I'm gonna do is I'm going to drag this out and manually drag salary to this, what is called the values area in Tableau. So then you will see it produces the same report. So that is the trick. Yeah. So this is not very clear here, but that is the equivalent. If I just do a step back, you will see, and then here in Tableau, Excel also, here years are listed, nothing is listed on the right hand side. Whereas in Tableau, it is putting this ABC. For many beginners, what does this ABC really mean? They ask me this question. So previously, before Tableau 10, you used to have this, instead of T, ABC icon here. So that way, for a beginner, when they see ABC, they know they have to drop something on this thing called ABC card, and then they will get it right. In Tableau 10, they changed it to T, which made it a little bit more complicated for beginners to understand what's going on. Really, ABC is telling you, please drop a number on this text shelf so that you will see a table. So I can take this time, and drop it on this, and then you will see values here. Yeah, so Tableau is trying to give you the clue, though by changing different things in different versions, they've lost this. Yeah, so far totally makes sense. Everything seems logical and good, so this is fine. So now let's add something on columns, which is gender breakup. So I'm gonna click on this. Let's see where Tableau Excel lands it. So by default, anytime you tick what we call a dimension, Excel is always going to put them on rows, never it will put on columns. Yeah, so we need to manually move this here. Yeah, whereas in Tableau, let's see what double click will do. So Tableau is doing the same thing. It is adding gender before year. So let's manually move it over here, and then we got this report. So if you compare these two reports, Excel by default has a grand total, whereas this does not have any sort of a total, right? So it has totals across this years, totals across this male and female thing, whereas Tableau does not have any of these totals. Yeah, so to me, having a totals on a table makes more sense, and probably that would have been a more useful default in Tableau, but that's where things are. There are a few ways to add totals, but for now in this part, let's skip, and in another part I'll cover grand totals in detail. So far things are very clear, right? So now let's come here to Excel, and then let's see how, for example, if I want to add something like age. So I'm gonna just check on age. What Excel is doing is, it is adding this to this area called sum of salary, then age is added, and then I see something like this sigma values here. Yeah, sigma values are here. So let me come here. The equivalent of basically checking here is double click. So I'm just gonna double click. So you could see this measure names have come here, measure values have come here, right? And then if you see here, this values in Excel and this measure values and the way it is displayed right now, this, if you see this measure values to this item, right, they look very similar, right? The values have come here, values have come here, and then sum of salary and age, and then we see this values icon in columns here, and then here we see the values icon. If I move it, here I see values icon here in the text shelf here, right? So there are some differences and there are some similarities. So for this video, let's stop here, and in the next part, let's cover measure values and measure names, and what is the usefulness of having this construct called measure names and values in Tableau.